This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Audible, a leading provider of spoken audio information and entertainment. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. To get a free audiobook, visit audiblepodcast.com/MacVoices. Welcome to Mac Notables on Mac Voices. This is the home of the Mac experts you want to hear from. I'm Chuck Joyner. We have Mr. Jim Dalrymple back in the chair with us this time, getting ready for WWDC and a whole bunch of other things that we'll get to. Jim, it's good to see you.
You too.
Okay, so let's see. Since the last time we talked, Tim Cook has been in front of Congress. You launched a magazine. You're getting ready for WWDC. Google had their I/O conference announced, so we got plenty to talk about.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff in there.
Yeah. So how about if we go to the impending one first, Jim? What should we expect to see at WWDC?
WWDC is a developer conference, so we're going to see developer things. And despite what some mainstream media people may come out with before or after the conference, this is what it's all about. It's about iOS 7. It's about macOS 10. It's not about iPhone hardware and iPad hardware. You know, that's not the place in my mind for those things to be updated. But you know that people are going to say that because there was no new iPhone hardware and that they expected new iPhone hardware, that the conference was a bit of a disappointment. But that's not what it's about. You know, 5,000 developers and however many press and developers that didn't get tickets go to the show to learn and to make apps. And that's what we're going to see.
Jim, the only thing that makes me wonder is that no matter what Apple does, whenever Apple does anything, the whole world is watching.
Yeah.
It's just, the nature of where they are right now. And so you have to wonder about the fact that we may, I don't know. Maybe I should take your word for it, but will we see some refreshes of any kind in the Airs, or maybe not the MacBook Pro, because that was just introduced last year at WWDC. On the other hand, it was introduced last year at WWDC. So,
well, the Mac actually fits well, and I did an article last week about that. That to me, the Mac fits well with WWDC. So if we're going to see some hardware, I would look to the Mac side for that hardware, not iPhone and iPad. The iPhone and iPad right now are their flagship products. That's where all the billions are. Is that and those warrant their own events. I mean, they can get the world's press to those events just snap of the fingers. So I wouldn't look for iPhone or iPad, but certainly Mac.
And that's so hard to remember at this point, that the Mac is no longer the flagship, that it is the iPads and the iPhones of the world that are leading the charge. I mean, the Mac is definitely in there, and it's a player, but it's just not the end all be all of what Apple is about now.
Well, the Mac still plays an important part in Apple's ecosystem, but it's just not leading right now. And there's nothing wrong with that, because mobile is the thing that's leading the whole tech industry right now, and the fact that Apple is on top of that is a good thing for Apple and for us as Apple customers.
Jim, you said no iOS hardware will make it all encompassing, but how about from the developer side? Is this something that we can all make sense out of? Do you think we're going to see changes that will make sense to us, or is it strictly going to be the behind-the-scenes things just for developers?
Well, typically what Apple will do is show off some features of iOS or macOS 10 that everybody can understand and everybody can see the benefits of. But then when the keynote is over and developers go to class, they sit down with with Apple engineers, and they really start digging into how to make this stuff work. And it's about getting it to work for their apps, so that when we download them from the App Store, they work as we expect them to. So it really is. It's like a 5-day class for Apple, for the developers with Apple. And that benefits us too. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we'll never know. But it's developer jargon and developer lessons anyway.
Yeah, we love to try to get the developers to talk to us, and they can't, and they shouldn't. There's no question about that. They're under NDA for a lot of this stuff, at least until it comes out publicly. I was really happy, though, to see that Apple is going to start releasing the videos of WWDC pretty quickly after the event. That's a nice change, and it seems to soften the blow just a little bit for those who didn't get tickets.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, to be able to, I think that they're going to do videos daily now, which is great, that they're going to be able to do that. And it will help, because there's, the tickets sold out in 90 seconds or something silly like that. 5,000 tickets just gone. Yeah.
It's pretty impressive, and it still shows the interest that people have in developing for Apple. It shows that it is an extremely viable ecosystem, in spite of what the mainstream media says about Android and Windows 8 or Windows Mobile or Windows Phone or whatever it is this week. I'm sorry, I'm being a little flip, but you can't help it at some point.
Well, I don't know if you saw today, ComScore released its newest research into the smartphone market, and Apple is the leading vendor for smartphone handsets, and they're at 39.2%. That's up 1.4 points, and Samsung is at 22%, and they're only up 0.6 points. So not even half a point. And when it comes to the operating system, the platform, Android leads with 52%, but that's down 0.3. Apple is at 39.2, and that's up 1.4. So, Apple is ahead in handsets, behind in the OS, but it's gaining ground. So that's good news for them.
Yeah, but what do you mean by behind in the OS?
Well, behind in market share. So what Apple has to deal with in market share is so they look at individual handset makers. So they don't look at all of Android clumped together. So they look at Apple, HTC, Samsung, Motorola, LG. And Apple is leading of all the handset makers. But then when you lump everybody together in Android, there's more people making, I think that the last time I looked, there was like 300 handsets for Android against 2 iPhones. So, Apple has quite an uphill battle, when they lump them all together under Android. But that's basically what that means. So when you talk Android, you're talking about the software. But when you're talking about the handset makers, you're actually talking about individual companies that make phones. And Apple's ahead by quite a large margin.
And that's, I guess it's lies, damn lies, and statistics. That those kind of things will not be interpreted by the mainstream press properly. They will say, "Oh, Android's gaining, Android's this, Android's that." You look at the push that Android's had recently. You look at the subsidies that are out there for Android. I mean, it's no really big surprise, I guess, that they are seeing a surge here. But yet we see so many statistics about what devices are being used to access what websites and what services. Right. And they just seem to be MIA.
Well, they do, and it's hard to really figure out. I mean, when you look at tablets, and the reports coming out that Apple has, not basically 90% of web share and traffic coming from tablets. Where are all these Android tablets that I hear about? Do people use them as doorstops? What are they doing with them? Because they're not going on the web with them. So, there's anybody can make these numbers sound however they want. You can twist numbers around like crazy. I mean, when I did the story this afternoon, I tried to lay it out like it is. These are the numbers and the ups or downs that the company's had since the last report, which was in January. So this is a quarterly report. And, the numbers are what they are. Apple is up, Samsung is down, Android is down, iOS is up. There's nothing else to it, really.
Yeah. So I guess WWDC is just what, it's what it stated. It's a developers conference.
Yeah.
We may see some news that is of interest to those of us who don't code, but at the same time, it is what it is.
I think one of the big things is going to be the design of iOS 7 and what Johnny Ive is going to bring to the table as far as design goes. A lot of people will be watching that.
Jim, this is going to sound strange coming out of an Apple person's mouth, but do you think that those kind of design issues, changes, whatever, are really that important right now? Form versus function?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do because Apple needs to make some updates to the operating system, and I use this example in that story that I did. I don't see Apple going to a completely flat design, like Windows 8. But I think that they do need to make some changes. And the way that I look at it is more modernizing the OS. So you remember when OS 10 first came out, and how candy bar it looked and all bubbly and aqua and everything else. And we thought it was great at the time. Look back at it now and we think, ooh, boy, that was pretty bad, But over time, they modernized that to, we still have the same Finder elements. There's just less shadowing. There's less candy and no pinstripes. It's a bit more sparse in the effects and things that go on. But we still recognize it as Mac OS 10. And that's what I think will happen with iOS. There'll be, less lighting and less shadowing and, less effects and things like that are on the apps, but we'll still recognize it as iOS. I don't think it'll take such a drastic change that we'll look at it and say, wow, that looks just like Windows,
No, I would hope not. I mean, it's interesting that you bring up OS 10 when it was first released. I mean, yeah, there was a lot of flash and there was a lot of candy bar effects, as you say, but the underpinnings were there.
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful that, okay, so we have a new look and that'll be it. I just want them to, get to work on some of the things underneath it, some of the issues that, we see out there right now. I just don't want it to be a makeover.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I think that the makeover is definitely important because that needs to be updated because that's what people see. But clearly there are things underneath that need to be worked on. And I can't imagine at this point that Apple isn't working on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. So let's see. WWDC is one thing, but there's this little thing called the Beard Party that is happening too, which may rival WWDC. I'm not quite sure.
Well, from what I hear, it went over quite well last year, so I'm doing it again. Yep,
I heard it was because of the host, actually.
I don't know about that.
Or maybe it was the host's wife. I'm not sure.
Maybe. She will be there again.
Good. Great.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm having a beard bash this year again, and we had so much fun last year because there was no sponsors, there's no marketing things, no marketing materials hanging around, it's about people coming and having a good time. And there's a lot of developers out there that they're either first time developers or they don't have a lot of friends that are out there, so they don't get invited to the big company parties. So this is kind of a place that they can come and feel meet new people and feel good too. And there's going to be friends from the press there and friends from all the companies, big and small. It's just going to be a good time. And I hired the same band. It's a karaoke band. So much like karaoke, except you get up with a live band and sing your song, which is, how many times do you get to go up and sing a song with a live band? Well, this is your chance to do that. And people had a blast with that last year. They really did.
I was surprised. I didn't think that this would be a karaoke kind of crowd, and quite to the contrary, they were up there. There was some choreography going on. There was a little bit of everything.
So, a little bit of everything. It was amazing.
It was great.
And there were people. At the end, there was still a line of people, a list that people wanted to get up and sing, and they couldn't because it was over, and people still wanted to get up. So, and of course, the more people drink, the more they want to get up.
So, will there be an appearance by the Beards guitar this year?
Yes, there will.
Oh, I gotta love
yes,
that.
Yes, there will. And last year I kept that quiet, but this year there's no point because I'm gonna get up and do a couple of things. But I do have a couple of surprises for what I'm gonna do, so I won't spoil the surprise, but It'll be fun.
All right. Well, I won't pump you too much. I'll just look forward to seeing what you're going to spring on us.
It's going to be interesting.
Okay, that's good. That's good. This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Audible, a leading provider of spoken word entertainment. The facts about Audible? Just the facts, nothing but the facts. Fact number 1. Audible has over 100,000 audiobooks, audio programs, and more to choose from in a wide variety of categories. Romance, science fiction, bestsellers, there's something for everyone. Fact number 2. You can listen to Audible content on pretty much any device you own. Mac, iPhone, iPad, iPod, even those pesky Windows machines and Android devices. Fact number 3. If you want to make better use of your time, Audible is the way to do it, since you can listen anywhere, anytime. Fact number 4. If you go to audiblepodcast.com/MacVoices, you get a free, yes, free book of your choosing just for signing up and trying Audible. My pick for this show? It's so difficult because there are so many great books out there just begging to be listened to. But I have to choose, so how about keeping with our theme of audiobooks to support movies and go with The Last Days of Krypton by Kevin J. Anderson. Learn the backstory that led to the destruction of Superman's home planet, the struggles of his parents, and the origins of his most potent extraterrestrial enemies, Brainiac and General Zod. The movie will only last a couple hours, but this book will deliver over 15 hours of enjoyment. Yours for the taking by going to audiblepodcast.com/MacVoices. That's audiblepodcast.com/MacVoices to get The Last Days of Krypton or any other book of your choosing. Free just for trying Audible. Thanks to Audible for sponsoring this edition of MacVoices. Well, let's see. So, since the last time we talked, I believe, you launched a magazine of all things.
Yeah.
Which makes me feel like, okay, you've just come full circle. The website, then back to the magazine. Yeah. What inspired you to launch a magazine?
For the past 3 or 4 years, people have been telling me that I need an app for the Loop. And it made sense that, I need an app. I understand that. What's the app going to do? And nobody could really tell me what an app could do that the website can't do, because the website is very simple. You know, it's very plain, and it's very easy to understand. So what can I do in an app to make that experience either better or different? And, you know, I talked to developers and designers for 3 or 4 years, and nobody could convince me. I mean, one time I was there. I was ready to pull the trigger and build an app. And then at the last minute I said no, because it just didn't feel right, you know? And then when I saw what Marco did with the magazine, I thought that this is what I want. You know, this is what I want to be able to do. So that's what I did. You know, the Loop magazine is different than the website. The content that's in the magazine is exclusive content written by, you know, other writers that I hire, and they write, you know, 700 or 1,000 words, or sometimes more, word articles. And, you know, I pay them as a writer, as writers should get paid, and not get taken advantage of like they often do. But this is exclusive stuff, you know, and this is the type of content I think that people want to read. It's interesting. It's entertaining. You can learn something, you know, so there's things in there that you're not going to find anywhere else. Even by these writers, you're not going to find anywhere else. You can only find it here. And, you know, there is a website component, but the website component of that isn't really that important to me. It's about being an iOS app and being a great iOS app. So when you open up the magazine and the first story comes up, there is basically no interface. You know, everything just kind of disappears into the background, and you're left with the words and images, you know, to read a story, and that's what we want. That's what it's all about. You know, there's no ads, there's no nothing to get in your way. It's just you in this article, and, you know, if you touch the screen, then buttons will appear in the corners so that you can go back, or you can share, or you can, you know, adjust your settings. You can swipe, and, you know, table of contents will come out for the issue, and you can move on to the next story, or you can go back. Once you subscribe, it's $1.99 a month. And once you subscribe, you have access to all of the issues, you know, so there's no, you know, tricks like you have to buy back issues or anything like that. You just have access to everything. So it's been interesting. It's been a lot of fun.
Jim, I've watched you publish the Loop magazine. I watched Don McAllister publish Screencasts Online magazine. Of course, we all saw Marco do, you know, his thing with the magazine. I can't decide if this is a backlash or if it's a more focused kind of reporting than what you put on the Loop and what, you know, other people deliver through their websites. It just seems to fly in the face, I guess, of I want my content out there everywhere all at once to be seen by as many people as possible. Instead, you're kind of locking it down in this way. And that's not, don't misunderstand, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just an interesting approach that it seems like goes contrary to what we've been seeing for the past 10, 12 years.
And I think that's part of the reason that it's going this way. There's so much out there. And, you know, it's like everybody is a writer these days. Whether they have experience doing it or not, everybody can be a writer. So everybody kind of looks down on on writing as being, well, yeah, but I can do that. I mean, you go tell them to pick up a guitar and play like Eddie Van Halen. Well, no, that's something special. Writing, that's nothing special. But when you look at the really good writers and the really good storytellers, I believe that people are willing to pay a small amount of money each month to get those types of articles. And like I said, it's $1.99, and that's for 2 issues. It's updated twice a month. There's about 5 or 6 articles in each issue, and by some really great writers or interesting people. For instance, in the first issue, I had Jordan Rudess, the keyboard player from Dream Theater, write an article. The second issue, I had Joe King, who was the co-founder and guitarist for The Fray. He did a really great article, inspiring article. And then, all kinds of different people mixed in there that I feel are either good writers or have written an interesting story that is worth sharing and is worth, as a reader and a subscriber, is worth your $1.99 a month. So,
Jim, that brings up an interesting point. What kind of content can people expect to find in the Loop? Is it going to be guitar oriented? Is it going to be Apple, Mac tech oriented? Is it going to be a mixture of both, kind of like the Loop is right now?
Exactly.
Okay.
The magazine is an extension of my interests on the Loop. So on the Loop, I post things about design, Apple, technology, music, all of that stuff. I post, and that's what's kind of special, I think, about the Loop as a website, because I feel no boundaries. I don't feel like I have to explain why I post anything. If I post a music video from Ozzy, or I post a BB King picture, or whatever it is, I don't feel any need to explain, and nobody even asks, because they know it's part of my interest. I post something about design. It could be about designing furniture, but there could be an element of that story that really caught my interest, and this is something that I want to share with the readers, and that's why it's posted. In order for something to get posted on the Loop website, it just has to be interesting. It has to be something that I want to be able to share. And most times on the website, I'll post a link to a great article so that people can go and actually read the original article, which I think is important that they do. If somebody wrote an article that's good enough to catch my interest, and it's something that I want to share with people, then I don't want to rewrite it. You should go read the original. So I post a link, and people go off and they read the original article. The Loop magazine is just like that, except I will go to the author that wrote that great article and say, I would like you to write something exclusive for me for the Loop magazine. And I'll pay you, and you write this article, and I'll publish it there. So, still my interests, but this time I go to the author directly and say, I really like that. Will you write for me?
I don't know. It's a very interesting experiment that you and some others are running. You look at what has happened with some of the mainstream media magazines and their attempts to do things. And I don't know, maybe it's because you're trying it on a smaller scale. Maybe that you're not having to invest, hundreds of thousands of dollars, that you're able to scale it up a little bit, experiment, tweak it, see if it works, see what works, and then keep on going. Because some of the things, what was it? Bloomberg just failed miserably. There were a couple different things that just failed horribly, and they just aren't working. And I don't know if it's because they're trying to translate printed content to a different format or a different medium, but it just, it just isn't working for the most part.
Well, and I think a lot of those media companies come with baggage. They come with a lot of overhead, and I don't have that. I don't have that overhead. I also don't have that tunnel of what people expect from me. If you say Bloomberg or you say The Daily or whatever it is, people expect a certain type of content. And that kind of boxes you into, we have to be this. I don't have to be anything. I haven't felt like I've had to be anything but what I want to do, for the last few years when I've been doing the loop. This is it. If I think that something is a good idea, I can go ahead and do it. And that's what I did with the magazine. I think by going out and getting some of these talented people to write and write about something that they want to write about. I mean, I don't go to these people and say, I want you to write about this, because then that kind of boxes them in. Instead I go to these people and I say, I would like you to write for me for the magazine. And they say, yes, I would love to. What would you like me to write about? I don't know. You tell me. What would you like to write about? Well, I would like to write about this. That sounds good. Now scurry along and write. So they're writing about something that they want to write about. I'm getting a good article from a writer that, not all of them are named writers, but writers that I like, writers that I think will do a good job and do a good article. Now, that doesn't mean that, when they come back and hand me a piece of crap, that it's automatically going to get published because, I told them to write it. I told them to write a good, interesting article. If they put back a piece of crap, then it's not going to get published. And everybody understands that. But I'm paying a good amount of money for each article, and I expect good work. And I don't think that's unfair, especially at a time where, some websites are paying, $10 for people to write stories. I mean, that's, and I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that, writers I think are undervalued, and there are a lot of good writers that aren't making a good deal of money because, sites either say, well, you write for us and you'll get exposure, or, we'll give you $10 an article or $15 an article. Well, exposure doesn't pay the bills, so I'm paying $500 for an article, but I expect good stuff. I expect the best. I don't expect people to hand me crap.
Well, again, Jim, it sounds like a quality kind of operation. And just like with the magazine, just like with Screencasts Online, the people are paying for quality content and not a lot of filler. And that too is another interesting model that I would not expect to pick up and see, a 5-sentence review of, I don't know, a new speaker or something. I mean, that's not what this is about. That is more suited for the loop. It's more suited, for something like that where you can use some PR. And if you want to do an in-depth review, then that's great. But, it just isn't going to fit here. So.
Well, I had one person say, well, there's only 6 stories. Why would I pay, $1.99 for basically for 10 to 12 stories every month when it's only, 10 to 12 pages? Well, okay, if you want it to be more like a magazine, then, the ad ratio is, 60-70%. So I can put full page ads in there, make it, 40 pages. And then are you getting a deal at that point because it's only $1.99? No, I removed all that stuff. No ads, no nothing, just content.
Well, and it also is a bit of an experiment to kind of cut out some of the ad-supported stuff and go directly with user-supported.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that, there's a right or a wrong here. It's just a different approach to it. So, if you get up to $10 or $20, a month, then people are going to expect a lot more content, and maybe you can deliver more content at that point without the need for the ads.
Yeah, well, maybe. I thought if I went with this model and with some great content, that people would be willing to pay for it. And I'm convinced that they are. I really am. I haven't had really too many complaints about the quality of the content or the people that are writing or anything like that. I mean, there's a couple of things on iTunes where people say there's not enough of it, or stuff like that. But for the most part, people are happy with the quality. They're happy with the amount because it gives them a couple weeks to go through, and it's the type of thing where you're traveling, you're on a subway or a bus, or you're on your way to work, you're on your lunch break, and you can pull this out and have a really nice read of a quality article instead of flipping through pages of ads and stuff.
I am quite anxious to see how the experiment works. I sincerely hope it works well, because not only for your success, but also just for the success of yet another new medium that seems to be developing out there, that we can get focused content, we can get it supporting you and Don, and now Glenn. Marco sold it to Glenn, so support Glenn and see the kind of content we want in another and maybe even longer form context than we have, because the web seems to be moving more and more to these short, abbreviated articles. So maybe this is where long-form content will land.
It's where it's landing for me. And what's funny? 20 years ago, when I started publishing on the web, the traditional newspapers and magazines, those companies had a hard time wrapping their head around the web. And I thought, this is going to work, and it did. We ended up being very successful, and that's a good thing. And when I looked at Newsstand, and I decided that this was what I wanted to do. This was going to be it. And I talked to I still know people in magazines and newspapers, and they were having a hard time wrapping their head around Newsstand and using that. And I thought, there's the proof right there. I'm on the right track, because they still can't understand it, And I really believe that it is the right track. I mean, there's shifts and the big word these days is disruptions in publishing and every industry. And I think for the publishing industry, the latest or next to latest big disruption was the internet. That really threw them for a loop, and it allowed everybody to publish. We could all do it. And we capitalized on that. And then 20 years later, the next big shift that I see is with Newsstand. I think that's the next big shift. And I think that's where a lot of the quality that we used to get on the web is going to go, is in places like Newsstand. I mean, and there have been a lot of things that have come out in the meantime. Zinio and different ways to publish PDFs into books and stuff like that. That's not what this is. I did look at all of that stuff, and it just didn't interest me. It didn't feel right to me. And, you can take PDFs and publish them on Newsstand right now, but that's not a native experience. I wanted the native look and feel, and I wanted it to be real. So that's what it is. See, now I just ramble. I'm getting old.
I don't buy that for a second. But, you make an interesting point about it being a native experience. Adam and Tanya Angst are frequent visitors here, talking about the experience that they have with publishing Take Control books. And it's a native experience. They don't just take it and say, okay, we're going to lay it out like a book and then hit print to PDF and, distribute it. We've had authors on here using iBooks, and the same thing. It's a native experience. And so that may be one of the key differences here, that what you're doing, what they're doing, are native experiences, as opposed to taking one medium and trying to squeeze it into this one. Right. And it just doesn't feel right. I don't even know why, but it just doesn't feel right. And,
if you look at what Adam and Tanya are doing, why are they successful? It's because it's quality work. They pay people to do quality work. They expect quality, and they get quality, and that's what they sell. And they have a good reputation. So, that's kind of what I expect too, just in a different form.
Jim, we've taken up a lot of your time here, but I do want to get to one last thing. And we talked about it at the top of the show. It's now a couple weeks old, looking in the rearview mirror. How did Tim Cook do in front of Congress?
I thought he was brilliant. I really did. I'm kind of amazed that Congress even brought Tim there, because to me they sounded, like greedy pants. We know that you have this stash of money, and we know that we don't have any right to ask for it, but we want it anyway. Congress it seemed to me that they were calling down Ireland for giving Apple tax breaks because they didn't want to give Apple tax breaks. Now, Apple and Tim Cook made it very clear that all of the money in North and South America, all of the profits, came back to America, and they were taxed. At 35%, they were taxed. And they paid $6 billion in taxes to the U.S. government. Now, the U.S. government looks over at Ireland, and the money in Ireland, as I understand it, is money that was made in Europe and that area. So all of that money went back to Ireland, and then that's where their headquarters is, and that's where they keep it, is in Ireland. Apple didn't funnel any money out of the U.S. and put it in Ireland and stash it over there, like the senators would have you believe, or congressmen, whatever they were. It almost sounded like they were telling people that, oh yeah, Apple, their little tricks. They funnel money out of the U.S. so they don't have to pay taxes. But that's not what they did. Apple, the only money that's in Ireland is money that was made outside of the U.S. So Apple has a choice. Ireland is going to tax them at, 1 or 2%. The U.S. is going to tax them at 35%. So do you bring home $100 billion and lose $35 billion off the top? Or do you leave it in Ireland and pay your 2%? Now, it also should be said that Apple paid tax on that money in whichever country the money was made. So they're not avoiding taxes anywhere. They're paying their taxes in each country. Now, if Ireland wants to offer Apple a sweetheart deal and say, we need jobs. If you come build a factory here, because they have one in Cork, an office, if you come here and do this, we'll give you these tax incentives. So Apple says, okay, great, let's do that. And that's been going on since 1980. It didn't happen 5 years ago when they started making all this money and they wanted to tax dodge everything around the world. It happened in 1980. So, it's a deal that's been going on for, 30, 40 years. So the Congress just made it look a lot worse than what it was. The problem, to me, seems to be Congress.
What can I say? I mean, it felt like a witch hunt. It was a very strange witch hunt because almost to a person, every single congressman or congresswoman said, "I love Apple. I love Apple. I've got an iPhone right here. I've got an iPad. I love Apple," and then started asking questions. But I agree with you. What you're describing is no different than every Walmart or Macy's or shopping mall or whatever, wherever they happen to be located, they go to municipalities, they get tax breaks or deals because in the long run, the municipality knows it's good for them. It's better with than without. So they make the concession, and that's why you have, the Walmart sitting in this county instead of this county. And I'm not picking on Walmart or advocating Walmart, but it's business. Well, it's strictly business.
Who ever heard of Maiden, North Carolina before Apple went there and built the largest privately held solar farm? Who? I mean, I'm not from North Carolina. I love North Carolina. I will say that I have been there. I do love it, and I'm not picking on Maiden. But honestly, who heard of Maiden, North Carolina before Apple went there? And do you think Apple went there because they say, wow, I really like the name Maiden, North Carolina. I am going to go there and put my new factory there. No, they came to Apple and said, here's what we'll do for you.
Right.
You bring that here, we'll do this. Does Congress have a problem with that? Because that's the same thing that Ireland did. But yet they seem to have a problem calling Ireland and the government names. And it's terrible. It's terrible that they did it. They should be ashamed of themselves for doing that because the Irish people are good people. And I've been over there twice in the last year, and I love those people over there. And for the U.S. Congress to do that is wrong.
But you know what, Jim? It's not a case of, I mean, whether the Irish people are good or not, and they're great. But the point is, it's business. Okay,
right.
It's strictly business. So I don't care if it's good, bad, or indifferent. You got to do business where you can do business and where it's advantageous.
So,
and that doesn't mean you have to get in bed with a dictatorship, but
no. But what about Texas? Apple's building this new plant in Texas. Did they go to Texas because there was no more room left in Maiden? I mean, Texas came to Apple and said, here's what we'll do for you. It's business. It's business for Apple. But, don't get your greedy pants on and think that you have, because you're Congress, you have access to all of a company's profits when they weren't made there, And for Congress to say stuff like, well, it says designed in California, so you should bring all that money home. Okay, our headquarters is now in Dublin, Ireland. How about that? Now you just lost the $6 billion that we were paying you. I mean, it's a business. It's a game. I know that, and what Apple is doing. I guess why it makes me upset is because Apple is not doing anything wrong, and I'm not defending Apple here. It's the laws, the way that they were set up for Google, for Microsoft, for General Electric, for HP, all of the companies. It's everybody. Everybody does it. And like one of the senators said, what would happen if Tim Cook said, you know what, I wonder how we could pay more taxes. That would be good if we get rid of some of this extra money we have out back and, let's give it to the government. He would be fired. The Wall Street would just crucify him.
Well, of course. I mean, there you're right up against shareholder responsibility. Your responsibility is to maximize the value for your shareholders. Apple has seen fit to do this in a particular way. Yep. It just.
If they could show, if Congress could show and say, We found out that Apple was moving billions of dollars offshore from the U.S., from its operations in the U.S., to avoid paying taxes. I would say, okay, that's a different story. Now Apple is in the wrong. You have to do something about that. But that's not what's happening. So, and it's not what's happening to any of the companies as far as from what you hear since then.
No, you're right.
So here I am playing with a guitar pick.
Yeah. Anybody in particular's guitar pick, or just yours?
Just mine.
Just yours. Okay. Jim, thank you so much for the time. It's always fun. We will see you, I guess, in San Francisco in about a week.
Yeah. The time's running short.
It is. I
have to take a bath.
Yeah, please take a bath. Thank you. Mr. Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. It's great to see you, and I'll see you in San Francisco.
Thanks, Chuck.
Folks, we'll see you right back here on the next edition of Mac Notables on MacVoices. I'm Chuck Joyner, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, app.net, Google+, Facebook, and for more Apple, Mac, and tech-related shows, including MacVoices, Mac Notables, the Mac Jury, and the MacVoices Briefing. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com.